All right. Hello, everyone. Hello and good evening. And thank you so much for tuning in and being patient with us this evening. I am Tamika Walker Kelly, your favorite music teacher and the president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, NCAE. And it is time to kick off our new season of Tuesdays with Tamika, season 3. And so joining me this evening, I have State Senator Don Davis, who I'm going to bring up in just a moment. He is our NCAE endorsed candidate for North Carolina's first congressional district. So here he is. Hello, Senator Davis, and you can say hello to the people.
Hello, NCAE, and I'm so delighted, excited to be on Tuesdays with Tamika, the music teacher.
That's
I,
right.
I need a lot of help, okay?
I mean, music teachers are so creative, so we got this thing down. We got it
All
down.
right. Even with students who are most challenged musically.
Yes, well, as a music teacher, everybody can be taught to carry a tune. So that's what
Okay.
we say. For sure.
Mm.
Well, Senator Davis, I'm so glad you are here because I wanted to have you on today because of your support of NCAE, your longtime commitment to public education, and your experience as a fellow educator. So, can you tell us about your background, why public education is important to you, and why you decided to run for public office?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tamika, for allowing me this opportunity to come before you yourself and everybody that's here. I'm Don Davis. I was born in Greene County, a native of Eastern North Carolina, and I remember in particular there are many values, but three in particular that my grandmother shared with me. And at the time I was born, my grandmother made a deal with my mom because she was still young, and she um, said, "I will raise your son, but you have to go to college." And my mom went on to Bennett College. But those values that grandma instilled in me at an early age, she reminded me through faith that we can move mountains. And then she would always, to make it, take her hand and point towards the temple there, the side, and she'd say, "Baby, whatever you get in there is hard to get rid of." And she knew, even though she had not stepped foot on the college campus in particular, she still understood the value of a good education, um, getting a good foundation. And she just knew where education could take you in life. And just a very wise person. And then the other thing she shared was the value of hard work. So no matter where I've been, to make, I've held on to those values. I can tell you, K 12, um, uh, several graduate degrees. My grandmother would remind me of the importance of showing up. She said, "You have to be there." And I can count on definitely less than two hands the number of days I missed in school out of all of my career. But it was those values early on in life that I've held on to, that continues to guide me. And it's really, I was in the United States Air Force. I graduated in 94 from the Air Force Academy. Went on to serve 8 years active duty in the Air Force, but I was at Andrews Air Force Base. And I was just trying to get back to North Carolina at the time. And in the military, they have, training and education program at Maxwell Air Force Base. So I ended up going through the training, becoming an assistant professor of aerospace studies at East Carolina University. I was teaching national security affairs, military history, also served as a commandant of cadets training officer. And Tamika, here's the deal. It was like serendipity because I was just at the time trying to get back to North Carolina, and education became the vehicle to do it. And I've just been honest with everyone. But when I stepped foot in that classroom, oh wow, it was magical, because I saw we have a real opportunity every single day to make a difference, a real difference in the life of a child.
Mhm.
um, I mean, we have that unique opportunity given to us to influence every career field, every profession there is. uh,
Mhm.
we just have that ability to inspire kids to really think. And I was at East Carolina University, and I realized, okay, I'm getting going good. I'm teaching military history, and it seems like the students were kind of zoning out. I said, I have to do something a little different here. I found myself making airplanes, standing up on the desk, flying, and just trying to use a unique approach to instruction. And at the end of the day, I believe I probably gained more out of it than the students, because they changed me. And I would say over 20 years later, I've continued to, reach out and take classes, up until COVID, teaching classes, hundreds of thousands of students out there. And I am a total believer in the power that we make as educators. And I want to personally thank every single educator that's out there, across our state. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for doing it during the tough, most difficult times, with COVID before, still dealing with, the challenges there. There's been so much placed upon you. And I just want to personally thank each and every one of you. But Tamika, I'm going to wind down here on the power of educators. I remember my youngest son, Kyler, he's 10 years old now. And still have two school age kids. Um, my oldest was public school as well. But Kyler was born, and we were experiencing complications. So we had to go back to the hospital, and they took us back to the labor unit. And I remember my wife was on a stretcher. We were going back, and I kind of felt someone looking over my shoulder, and it's like kept kind of peeping. And I finally turned and looked, and the person said, it was a nurse, said, "Mr. Davis." I said, I recognized one of my former students. And
Oh.
so, we're going at it, hugging and everything. And, before I realized my wife was sitting there, she's still a little in pain. But then she looks up and she says, "Wow, y'all have all this going on. I just have one question. How did she do in your class?" Because she was about ready to get treatment. So here's the point that I'm making here. When we're sitting in those classrooms, pouring our hearts and souls into our students, we never know the next one who will be a nurse, that doctor that may tend to us. Who knows? It may be a lawyer one day that may very well, provide us legal counsel. It may be, a military airman or soldier who's protecting our very freedoms, protecting democracy in this country. And I can't think of any other profession to be a part of that we can just take so much pride in making America what it is.
Well, I thank you for sharing that powerful story about the power of relationships that educators make with their students. And also, shout out to you for being an aerospace educator at the East Carolina University. Go Pirates! Shout out to all my
Yeah.
no, but that is an amazing story. Now, one of the things some of us understand, because you are running for federal office, right? Some of
Yes.
us understand the different roles that government plays, either local, state, or federal, in public education policy and funding, but it is a little confusing to the average person. So, could you explain the US Congress's role in public education policy and funding? Or to just put it a little bit more simply, why should NCAE members, teachers, bus drivers, school administrators care about electing a pro public education candidate like you to the U.S. House of Representatives?
Oh, wow. At the end of the day, this is about our students, making sure that our students have the resources they need to um, e- e- to get everything they can out of the classroom to thrive, and to go on to become just incredible citizens and people. So how does that breakdown, we see here at the state level, education tends to be about 60%, 55 to 60%. It fluctuates a little bit of the general spend. Um, we've seen the challenges when we talk about resources in education in the state of North Carolina. In the awful case of Leandro, we see in Leandro where six school boards joined the lawsuit to sue the state because kids were not afforded their constitutional right. We've seen that continue to play out now over a couple decades, in which fundamentally resources are not getting into the classroom to help our students best prepare themselves for their future to live the American dream. So, how does all this now fit in with the federal government? The federal government, actually, you tend to see a little over $1 trillion that would go out the door um, 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 overall in education across America. The federal government is typically about 8% of that spend. It's about 8% of that spend. But the role of the federal government is making sure that we are able to fill, especially those gaps that the state's not able to fill or having challenges filling. Especially when I think in terms of, for instance, Title One funding. This Congressional District 1, the 19 counties, 14 of the 19 counties, 100% of the schools, 100% of schools in those counties are Title One. So you need, in particular, the federal government to play a role of helping to level the playing field, especially in economically distressed areas. That's one. Another is, when we think of COVID, I remember being at the General Assembly and the reports were coming in, and this is the quickest, the fastest that we've ever seen unemployment applications coming in. And I remember going over 1 million unemployment applications, because we were trying to figure out and deal with this public health emergency called COVID-19. Um, if you go back and recall, at that time, we were dealing with the economist, our state's economists. They were forecasting that we would actually, experience a enormous shortfall. But it was then the federal government, that kicked in those relief packages, the CARES Act, the COVID relief package, the American Rescue. And it was then because of that where we're facing an economic crisis, literally, not knowing where it was going. The federal government was able to now send money into the states, in which we were able to pass through, and there were a lot of critical decisions made at the General Assembly, dealing with ESSER and other funding. Those were the dollars we used to get extra laptops out to teachers, hotspots out to kids, hotspots on the buses. Those federal funds too were funds, for instance, that helped to make sure that kids were still getting good meals, because sometimes for some for some families, that school lunch is the only real meal that kids going to get that day. It was those federal funds that allowed then us to take lunches out on buses and meet families, at corners and stores and so forth, to get those meals out. So there's a host of purposes, and the federal government tends to try to fill those gaps, and especially that naturally exists. Special needs, that's another area too that we have to always be mindful of. When we think beyond K-12, we think of areas such as Pell Grants, reauthorizing Pell Grants, in terms of making sure that even the least of those amongst us have the ability to get a good education and still live and realize the American dream. A couple other points that I will point out in terms of this federal role. the federal role, and let's think globally for a second. Nationally, we're talking about a little over 18,000 school districts. We're talking right under 100,000 schools. We're talking about 50 million students that are typically coming through this pipeline. And, part of the federal role too is to make sure that, our students, broadly speaking, are able to compete in a global economy. And that's something that, when we're looking across the board, that the federal government, I still believe, should and have a role in that process. And then the last thing I would throw in, where we see, for instance, the role of the federal government. I come, as I shared earlier, from a military background. So when we were coming out of, for instance, World War II, the federal government played a huge role at, through the GI Bill, at, educating, helping to educate and fulfill national security objectives through education. Education is really tied into our national security.
Well, I appreciate you breaking all those different parts down, because we hear about, like, especially for people who are not educated. So I'll say that too, like Title One, IDEA, which is the special education part of the federal government that they fund. All of those things are crucial and critical, excuse me, to public education. So thank you for breaking that
Mhm.
down for our audience this evening.
And Tamika, let me add this too. Let me share this too, just the small things, because we want to connect to the role of the federal government here. It was through some of those federal funds that we were able to, extend the emergency, um, salary increases, dealing with the COVID. So, the federal government, I believe, still plays a huge role in making sure that we're able to fill the gap, and ultimately that, every kid has an opportunity if they really take it upon themselves. And if we can then expose our kids to just caring and loving teachers, that are embracing them, giving them all the tools they need, the love, the support, that yes, they can live the American dream.
Yes, absolutely. And I really like how you outlined that it's everybody's commitment, local, state, and federal, to be invested in our public schools for our democracy, for the work of our communities. So thank you for making that connection for everybody. Now we are coming up on our time together. I know it moves so fast, right? But I do have one more question, and it is a question that I have for everybody who's watching as well. So it'll be your turn too, but it's probably the most important one, as we are only 34 days from Election Day, and voting by mail has already started. Early voting will be starting soon. So, Senator Davis, what is your voting plan?
My voting plan, thank you, Tamika, is to vote with my, wife and my oldest son, and especially, having an opportunity to run for Congress. This is my first run for Congress. Um, it's important to me to, be with them. Um, and in the primary, we're running all over the place, but I really would like to, do this as a family. So my voting plan is to do it during the early voting, period. But we do encourage everyone to get out there, whether it's absentee by mail. Some have already cast votes. We have in the first congressional district over 100 who've already voted in this election. We can track this. It's very safe and secure. And we have to, by the way, restore the confidence in the political process here. That our elections are fair, they are safe. But you can do it by voting by mail. Early voting starts October the 20th. We encourage everyone to please consider that. And as a last resort is Election Day. But Election Day is still an opportunity. Some I talked to, is part of family traditions that they will wait until Election Day. But we encourage you, to get out there, get it done. And if you just must wait to Election Day, still vote in this critical election that's before us.
Yes, so a shout out to y'all going on early voting during the early voting period. And we are very, very excited, and we want to encourage all who are watching, right, to make your voting plan too. So, to the people that are watching on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, what is your voting plan? So, whichever route you choose, we want you to know that you have many choices to cast your vote and use your voice in this election. As you heard Senator Davis said, you can vote by mail, which has already started. So you can request a mail in ballot. So shout out to the North Carolina State Board of Elections. You can early vote, which starts on October 20th. Or you can wait till election day, which is November the 8th. And also want you to know that soon you will be able to visit our website. As you know, NCAE always does a website where we list all of our pro public education endorsements before you go out and vote, and that will be up soon. So I want to thank you, Senator Don Davis, our NCAE endorsed candidate for the North Carolina 1st Congressional District, for being on with us today. Do you have anything else you want to say to the people who are watching?
I would like to thank each and every one of you, NCIE. Thank you so much for what you do, first and foremost. And yes, I dearly appreciate, I'm entirely grateful, for the endorsement, for the support, to know that that our teachers, our educators are standing with me in this journey. And Tamika, I have a question for you. You've asked me questions. When am I going to get my music tip? I want my music tip.
So
Huh?
here is a terrific Tuesday, a tuneful Tuesday music tip of the day, is that you should always warm up your voice before you start speaking or singing so that you don't have vocal fatigue. And so you
Oh.
can do that uh, by singing up and down the scale, or just singing a favorite song that you are comfortable with. And that way you won't run your voice out on the campaign trail, Senator Davis. We need you to fire up the crowds and talk to them. So we don't want you to have a hoarse voice at all. So
Okay, I'm gonna practice next time. Mommy, my mo moo.
I love it. I love it. It's so good. So good. I love it. Yes. It's good stuff. So, shout out to Senator Davis and his singing voice. He's going to be ready to do his first solo on the campaign trail. We'll have to come out there. And thank you all for watching this evening. As you know, please keep an eye out for more episodes of Tuesdays with Tamika. We are officially started season 3. As you know, we always kick off during the election season. But if you know a voter who has not yet met Don Davis, and is in his district, you can share this episode with them so that they are an informed voter. So, like I said, watch this space every Tuesday at 6 o'clock for Tuesdays with Tamika. Thank you all for watching this evening, and we will see you soon. Bye.